Okay, my name's Kevin. This is DPA Bark Park, here for another story night. So today it's going to be based on a question that I asked a friend of mine. We were having a slight conversation because there's a cow person, as I like to call them, who just, Anyways, so I said to my friend, who has just as much awesome imagination as I do, a question about the first initial lights that God produced outside of the one where he said, "Let there be light," and realized that this light was good. And the answer that came to me was, well, that's pretty interesting. And so I want to present it to you. It's a part of what helps create good mental health for me. Helps in the living situation that we're in. It's helped create a lot of good friends when we keep it friendly and nobody's stepping on nobody's toes. So this is a question in regards to God's first few lights that were created, and not the one necessarily where he said, "Let there be light." But this is what makes it very interesting, is the integration between the two. So I hope you enjoy this, and here we go. The question proposed to my friend was that God said, "Let there be light," and that he realized or said afterwards that the light was good. And he separated the light from the darkness or the shadow that was cast by his spirit or her spirit. The godly denotation of gender is not revealed until later. So at this point, we really couldn't say for sure, because throughout the Bible, there's a lot of identity theft. So here we go. God created, as he was creating, the heavens and the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. Now, in previous videos, we've really discussed some very interesting concepts as to what this could mean. At this point, though, we are going to focus on a couple of different vocabulary words and the definition then given to those vocabulary words. So in this here, we've realized that darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over those waters. So we're going to accept in this fun, creative thought project that the darkness is the casting of God's Spirit over the deep waters. And afterwards, God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. We've also discussed in previous videos some interesting concepts to this. But what we're going to also discuss here primarily is these few couple definitions. God saw that the light was good, and he separated. At this point, we now have a sexual orientation of God. We can't necessarily say that that is the initial God, because the sexual orientation of God has been given to us this much later. So we're going to accept, though, that God saw that the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness, which is the shadow that's being cast upon his creation or its creation. And at this point, there could already be two different periscoped levels of deities in creation. So it could be a God and then the lesser God that is then created this light, or called light. But what we're going to accept, though, is that God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. So the light that was good is called day. The darkness that cast the shadow over the surface is called night. Okay. There was morning, there was evening, because this is very important. There was evening and there was morning the first millennia. Okay. Now, the next interesting portion to this is going to be where we talk about the fact that these extra lights have been created. Now, as we go on, we're going to pass a couple of different paragraphs in the Genesis, because we're not going to be worried about a few of the other creations that were made at this point, because we're specifically looking for any other notations or annotations, depictions, or further definition of this vocabulary that we have now accepted. So now we're going to make it down to Genesis chapter 1, paragraph 14. And it says, "And God said, let there be lights in the vault of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them serve as signs to mark sacred times and days and years. And let them be lights in the vault of the sky to give light on the earth." So those lights are very specific to earth. Okay? So that is a completely kind of subset of information regarding lights, but these lights have been specified to their operations in regard to what is happening from Earth's perspective outward. Okay? Now, we're going to step back into a realm outside of Earth, and we're going to discuss these other very interesting lights and their definition and relation to the previous definitions of light that is good and the darkness that casts shadow over the waters. Now, the light, we don't necessarily have any other depictor as to which this may be. I am going to kind of guessly assume that maybe if and there is the potential that this God that we are reading is in reference truly to a male, that this light might be his wife, and he may have been an asshole at this time. But I don't know. But here is why there is this interesting question in regard to the light that is good and the darkness that is night, and its relation to these two very particular lights that were created, and their relation, therefore, to the previously mentioned light and darkness, or day and night. God made, and now this is Genesis chapter 1, paragraph 16. I believe that's the way it's said. I know it is Genesis 1.16. God made two great lights. The greater light to govern the day, and the lesser light to govern the night. It goes on to say, he also made the stars. God set them in the vault of the sky to give light on the earth. Now, if we back up just to what I was referring to, Genesis 1.16, God made two great lights. It's very specific to these. It's very specific that these are great lights. These lights have been made after other stars have been made that already denotate the days and seasons, the morning and evening and night and day of planet Earth in itself. So these two greater lights are outside the realm of its necessary interactions directly with the perspective of those from Earth outwardly. These two great lights, one is the greater light, the one with the most responsibility, the grander of the two, the larger of the two, is to govern the day. And it is very specific how it says this. Now, this is in other Bibles too. It's worded slightly different, but it's very specific that the greater light is to govern the day. Govern meaning manage, take care of, govern like put a limit on its ability so it doesn't burn out. Like you could put a governor on a motor because the motor could just keep going, that it'll break the rest of the system. So you have to put a governor on the motor so that it keeps the motor operating in the parameters that the rest of the system can withhold. This could mean a multitude of things. Govern could also be like the superior elf in Santa's workshop telling Santa, we need this or we need that or da-da-da-da, you got to get out there, da-da-da-da. So govern could mean a multitude of things. But the greatest governor, the one with the most responsibility, is the one set to govern the day. The day being the light that God said, let there be, that is good. The other interesting concept, and what is really fascinating to me, is the second light, the lesser light with the least amount of responsibility, being by the notation of lesser, dimmer, maybe not needing to be as intelligent. It could be a servant light. It could be something that it is being filled in because it is not full yet. So that lesser light is to govern the night. Yes, so I am sorry, I wanted to reread that again to make sure I had it correct. The greater light to govern the day, the lesser light to govern the night. Now, as I was saying before, the questions about this interesting thought project that's good for the mind, good for the soul, and it very much goes along with many teachings in the Bible, is to be very creative with things, because it doesn't necessarily have to be this is da-da-da-da and this is da-da-da-da. It could be there for all kinds of healthy aspects. It could teach you to exercise and all kinds of things. So, when I thought about this, I was reading the Bible and I was looking for things that captured my attention. I wanted to see if they captured my attention later. I left them in the forefront of my brain. I came across it so quickly in the very beginning that it's a question that I've had for quite some time. And like I said, I talked to a fellow friend of mine, and he thought that this was quite an interesting thought, that God may have created himself or herself, itself, theirself, governors to restrict their flow so that the rest of the system isn't overboarded or waterboarded or shorted out, or however the system may be. They may also be, like I said, the servants of the workshop that are superior. They may be all kinds of different things. But the interesting concept in this thought project, and what it is like I said, this could make a great movie, is that God said, let there be light, and there was light, and the light was good, and he called the light day, after denotating himself to be the darkness over the deep of the water by his Spirit being cast thus forthly. And then later, after have finally creating the earth and the stars that govern the earth and its operations, there was then created two greater lights. One, the greatest light to govern the day being the light that God said, let there be, that is so good. And then God himself denotating himself as the darkness casted over the deep, being called the night, was to be governed by the lesser of the two greater lights. I hope you enjoy this thought project and it wanders in your mind for a while. If you would like to further be a part of our fun, go ahead and hit the subscribe, drop us a comment, give us a thought of your own. Let's have some fun. This is Kevin from DPA Bark Park.